Prima Media's Mining Weekly is interviewing Jacob Roodquist, the Vice President Strategy and Commercial for the Battery and Hybrid Electric Vehicle Business Unit of Sandvik Mining and Rock Solutions. Jacob, it's great to chat to you. Sandvik launched its prototype 65-ton underground emission-free battery electric truck at Electromining Africa. Jacob, a calculation has been done which shows that if mining were to electrify every mining truck, it would stop nearly 200,000 tons of carbon dioxide a day from entering the atmosphere. This equates to a single electrified mining truck eliminating what would take more than 40,000 trees to absorb. So let me ask you then, within your sphere of influence, how much carbon dioxide could you potentially eliminate by providing electric alternatives to the products driven by fossil fuels?
Yeah, good question. So our sphere of influence when it comes to trucks and loaders, it's basically underground mining. So we don't have any products in that space for surface mining or open cut mining. So for an underground mine, you will be looking at something like 55% there around of your total emissions comes from your mobile equipment fleet, and about 65% of that from trucks and loaders. So that means we have a sphere of influence of 35 to 36% of an average underground mine's total emissions. So that's what we can address. So if you deploy a full Sandvik loader and truck fleet for your underground mine and you power that with renewable electricity, you'll be looking at something around 35% of your total emissions that you reduce. I have a rule of thumb. It's typically 1 to 2 tons of CO2 per day per machine. It depends on the machine model, but something like that. So big step forward towards the net zero commitments that more or less all of our customers have adopted.
What milestone has Sandvik already achieved in helping mining companies to decarbonize?
We actually started a very long time ago. The first electric loader came out the same year I was born. So that's 1982. That's when Sandvik launched the first electric loader. And then the first electric truck came in the late 80s. So these were cable electric, connected to the mine grid with a cable. We launched our first automated electric loader in 2009. And then we acquired Artisan Vehicle Systems in 2019. So that's actually where I sit right now. And this is our R&D hub now and prototype factory for battery electric vehicles. So we've been doing electric for a long time with cable. And now the big new thing is battery electric. And we actually, I think this year also is a milestone because we've secured some very large orders, up to 20 machines in a single order, fully electric. And battery electric now. So it's really a journey from cable electric to battery electric. And then, of course, we're also looking at decarbonizing the diesel machines. So that could be like stage 5 engines or biodiesel, like we're exploring for some of our products right now. So those are some of the milestones.
When it comes to decarbonizing underground mining activities, what is your unique selling proposition?
So number one, and that's our slogan here in the battery electric space, that's rethink the machine, not the mine. So I think that's our unique selling proposition, that our electric equipment, our battery electric equipment are probably the easiest of any battery electric products to actually implement in an underground mine. The charging system is fully mobile. You can move it around, place it where you need to and move it as the mine evolves and you need to move the machines to a different section. We have the battery change-out process is done by the machine itself, so we don't require any fixed infrastructure, any large overhead cranes to move batteries around. It's actually the machine itself that does the operation. So highly flexible and able to implement by pretty much any existing operation. So that's a big unique selling proposition. Maybe another one I'd like to mention is the battery system. So we decided 3 years ago now to go down the route of 100% for mining battery systems. So we've we acquired a company, as I mentioned, in 2019, and then we've continued to invest in the battery platform that they had developed for mining. So it's 100% for mining. We currently have a 100 megawatt hour battery factory, and all the requirements, all the specifications, like all the focus of the engineers, all the product development efforts are for mining. So we don't take automotive technology and repurpose for mining. We actually built and keep investing in a battery system for mining. So that I think that gives us some of the fastest, strongest, and highest performing battery electric products that you can find for an underground mine.
And when your battery electric truck was started on the exhibition floor at Electro Mining Africa in Johannesburg, visitors weren't the wiser, because it is hardly a sound that you hear. So how close to being noiseless is this machine?
Yeah, so it's not noiseless. Like, you hear some pumps and you hear some of the electronics. It's certainly, we haven't measured like the decibel. Maybe we should. It's certainly well under half. Actually, some of the customers we currently have, the operators and the people working around the machines are very surprised, because they can actually have a conversation close to the machines, whereas before they couldn't. So I would say it's mostly a worker health or a work environment benefit. Then from a safety point of view, we need to make sure that the silence of the machine doesn't become a risk. So we actually have implemented now proximity detection interface as a standard option that you can choose. And then the machine that we had at Electro Mining, the 65-ton truck, was the first one that we had fitted with the new Trax collision avoidance system. So we have some customers who've actually fitted like noise devices on the machines, just to make sure they're noticed when they drive around. But of course, the best would be to let them be silent and enjoy that work environment improvement, but then make sure you have collision avoidance system so it doesn't become a risk.
Even more significant is the low level of heat that's generated, which must be of a great benefit. How much heat does it eliminate?
So the reason why you eliminate heat, if we start there, is that the electric motor is so much more efficient than the internal combustion engine. So in an electric engine or an electric motor, you get maybe 90% of the energy you put in is actually going to the work that needs to be done, whether that's powering a hydraulic system or traction motors in the machine. Whereas on an internal combustion engine, 30% actually reaches the intended use, and the rest comes out as heat. So what that leads to is there's about 80 to 90%, a little bit depending on the application, less heat generated with an electric machine. So there's just, all the energy more or less that you put in actually goes to the intended need or powering the intended use of the energy, whereas the diesel generates a lot of heat that you need to then ventilate out. And it causes a lot of issues also for the work environment. Actually, for maintenance crews, one of the biggest benefits that they see of these machines is that there are no high temperature points of maintenance. So there's just a much easier and better from a safety point of view work environment for maintenance technicians. And then, of course, the ventilation benefit, as you don't need to ventilate out all that excess heat.
Tell us about the recharging, how long the batteries last, and the job of replacing the battery, and what the operators do when that takes place.
We get a lot of questions about the runtime. So the runtime of the battery, basically how long can you run on one charge? So that depends a lot on the application. Some applications are less energy demanding, and some are very, very intensive and high energy demanding. So if you start with, if you do, for example, on level work with our LH518B, the 18-ton loader, that's a relatively low energy application. So then you'll be looking at 5, 6, even up to 7 hours of runtime. Whereas if you run the 65-ton truck that we had at Electro Mining on a steep ramp, fully loaded, you'll be looking at something like 1.5 to 2 hours of runtime. So that's about the range. What we've made sure then, because if the runtime is short, you need that battery swap or battery change-out procedure to be very fast, so you don't get a negative impact on your productivity. So with our system, we call auto swap and auto connect. Basically, the machine swaps and also disconnects and connects the battery to the machine. It can be executed fully from the cabin, so you don't need to exit the cabin to do it. It takes about 5 minutes. Someone still needs to connect the battery to the charger and cooler when you swap the battery. So that can be done either by the operator, then adding a few minutes just to jump out from the cabin and connect and disconnect to the charger, or if you have an opportunity to have someone operating the battery swap bay, then that can be done by another person, and then the operator wouldn't even have to leave the cabin at all.
And when it comes to this 18-ton loader that's going to be acceptance tested at South Africa's South Deep gold mine, when is that going to start? And then when is the acceptance test on the truck that was shown to us going to happen at Australia's Sunrise Dam gold mine?
Yeah, so the 518B loader, it was actually site acceptance tested already last year, in 2021 in Canada, at New Afton mine. So it's already accepted, tested, and it's a commercial product that we're running currently in 3 of our main markets. And then with the introduction at South Deep, that's going to be our first entry into Africa. So we're super excited, but it's a commercial product already. It's not a site acceptance test. We'll start beginning of next year, early next year, with the commissioning at South Deep. I actually had the opportunity to visit the mine now when I was in Africa for the electro mining show. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I think we're well prepared, both on the customer side and on Sandvik's side in South Africa, for a successful introduction of this technology. Then for the 65-ton truck, that's actually also starting in the beginning of next year. But that's a site acceptance test. So we're going to test that truck, put it to very hard use in Australia with Barminco and AngloGold Ashanti Australia. And then that's going to run probably for the first half of next year. And then we will learn a lot, I'm sure. And then we will implement some improvements and maybe some product upgrades based on what we learn. And then that machine will become commercially available in 2024.
Which trucks are now commercial?
So we have basically 3 models that are commercially available today and tested and proven. So we have a small 4-ton loader, and then we have an 18-ton battery electric loader, so that's the LH518B, and then we also have a 50-ton truck, so a little bit smaller than the 65-ton, that's the TH550B truck. So these are all commercial and available products. We've had some, I would say, very strong growth in demand this year, as we've been also communicating some very large orders. We're looking at Canada being the first mover market, leading market today, but rapidly picking up pace in Australia, Northern Europe, also in Africa. We started the year with 1 production unit making BEVs, and we added another production unit now, and we're adding a third. So by the end of this year, we'll have 3 production units to satisfy the rapidly increasing demand. We also have very high hopes for the 65-ton truck. That's going to be our next big product launch. And then we're also looking at some features. We're looking at different digital solutions, different automation solutions that we will also launch, and that we've been working on in the background. We have an overall kind of commitment for the product range, for a full range offering in 2025. So by the end of 25, we will cover all the major size classes, not low profile though, unfortunately for some of our African customers or South African customers, but all the major and kind of standard product size classes will cover by the end of 25. And we're also working on our drills, both underground and surface drills, to electrify that offering.
To what extent does the heavy weight of the battery inhibit performance, and how do you overcome that?
For the loader, it's actually an improvement. So if you think about a loader, when you muck and when you drive into the muck pile and engages the rock, a conventional diesel machine is very front heavy. So you lose quite a bit of your traction in the rear as you start to fill the bucket. Whereas on a battery loader, you have all that weight of the battery in the back. So we see a quite significant improvement in traction and just in muck pile performance and power as you engage the rock. So for the loader, it's a clear improvement. For the truck, it can be a negative because you have that additional weight that you need to carry up and down, especially if you do ramp hauling and you move a lot of weight basically in the battery up and down. So we do mitigate some of that with regenerative braking. So the battery, it's an additional payload that you have to carry up, but it's also a payload that gives you regenerative braking as you drive down, and you put some of that power some of that energy back into the battery. There's also an impact on the machine stability from that additional weight in the front. It's not a negative, but it's something that we have to think through with the design of the machine and look at some changes to how we do oscillation and suspension and just the cab design and seat design to make sure we have the same comfort and ride stability with that additional weight.
There are quite a variety of electric possibilities, but when do you use the cable electric, when do you use the battery electric, and hybrids and trolley battery hybrids, when do you put these into action, in what situations?
As a general principle, we, as an OEM, we don't have any preference for what our customers should use. We want to be able to offer whatever the most suitable, most efficient product is for each application. And sometimes it's battery, sometimes it's cable, sometimes it's low emissions diesel, sometimes it might be trolley. I see definitely there might be a need for that. I would say in general, if you have a very fixed footprint that you're working in and you have a well-maintained, well-structured and very kind of systematic operation you're running, then cable electric can make a lot of sense. We have sold more than 600 cable electric loaders to date. So there are some mines where that suits very well and it works well, and they're able to organize the running of that fleet not to make the cables kind of impractical. I would say in very long ramps and heavy work on very long ramps, that's where we see potential, like the 65-ton truck going to Australia. There might be cases where it's better to use a battery trolley hybrid or diesel electric hybrid technology. And then on not aggressively steep or not 10 plus kilometer ramps, I would say battery electric can work very well. I expect battery electric to be, for most loader applications, probably the better solution. And then for a good share of the trucking applications, the better solution. But then some, as said, especially very long and heavy work on ramp, that can make a lot of sense to have a trolley system as well, and or a diesel electric hybrid. But it's definitely maturing fast, I think, in particular battery and battery technology. But we're keeping all eggs in the basket in terms of also exploring other solutions and making sure we can satisfy demand for not only battery electric.
In the interests of genuine decarbonisation, will it be recommended that the electric trucks and the battery vehicles be recharged using solar, wind or hydropower?
So it's certainly better if you want to reduce emissions. If you charge your batteries with renewables or nuclear, then of course you have 100% reduction of the operating CO2 emissions from that vehicle. Whereas if you charge with kind of a gas and coal mix, some high emission electricity, then you might look at 20% reduction. So it's still a reduction, but it's very, very much less. So if you want to reduce emissions, certainly you want to put renewables in the battery. Actually, South Deep, as we were discussing before, they have their own solar farm. I was very, very impressed when I saw that last week. And many other mining companies are investing in their own solar farms, wind farms, hydroelectric plants. So I definitely see a move towards, I guess, being more in control of the energy supply to the mine, and then also making sure it's renewable. So when that's possible, it's certainly going to be the optimal setup.
What metals and minerals are used in Sandvik's battery electric trucks?
So if you take the whole machine, of course, it's mostly steel, and then we have some aluminum and copper, but as a percentage of the total weight, we're very steel-heavy product. If you zoom in on the battery, actually there's quite a lot of steel in the battery as well. As I mentioned before, we decided to design a battery for mining, so it's very rugged. So there's mostly steel, but if you zoom in on the cells, we use lithium iron phosphate cells. So that's the technology we use. We don't use any cobalt. So yeah, it's basically lithium iron phosphate and then a lot of steel and aluminum and copper, highly recyclable, of course.
Jacob, what in your view should be the key takeaway from this interview?
When we talk about electrification and I guess sustainability and electrifying mining, we focus a lot on what we can reduce. So we're reducing emissions, we're reducing noise and heat, So that's one side of the coin, and that's great. I think what's important to emphasize, and we've been talking about it in this interview, is that you can also increase a lot of things. We have more power, we have a potential to improve performance, speed, tons moved. So I think that's key with the battery electric or electric machines, that it's not only about reducing, it's also about increasing other things, increasing the positives and reducing the negatives. So that's one thing. And maybe the second one I'd emphasize is that this is not new. As mentioned, we released our first electric machine in the 80s, 1982. So the technology is not new, but certainly it's accelerating fast. And in particular around battery technology, we're seeing very, very rapid advances in technology. But this is not electrification as such is not a science experiment that just started. It's a very solid and consistent trend that's been going on for decades, but certainly accelerating right now.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Jacob Roetquist, the Vice President, Strategy and Commercial for the Battery and Hybrid Electric Vehicles Business Unit of Sandvik Mining and Rock Solutions.